Before the pandemic, online interviews were conducted, but it was almost anecdotal. However, with the significant change that the lockdowns have brought to our lives, virtual interviews have become very, very common. And doing an online interview may be very similar to doing an in-person interview, but there are a few differences you should keep in mind if you want to present your best self and have a chance at getting the job. So if you have a virtual interview coming up, stay tuned to this video because I'm going to share some of the best tips I can give you to make your interview a complete success. Let's get started. You see, a large part of the advice I'm going to give you has to do with the audiovisual aspect of the interview. Because believe it or not, the image is super important, and in a virtual interview, it is even more so. Before we start, let me tell you that in the description you can see some videos where I have talked to you about some of the most frequently asked questions in job interviews and how you can perfectly prepare for the 2009 interview. But in this video, we are going to focus mainly on how you can conduct a virtual interview, and many of the tips are related to the audiovisual aspect. So take good notes and let's get started. You might be the best candidate for this position, but if that doesn't come across in the job interview, believe me, you're out. So let's start by having some moderately decent devices. Some good audiovisual means to make the interview truly successful and as natural as possible. First, let's start with the video. Most of the information you will convey in that interview will be perceived visually, so it is super important that you have a good video device connected. If you don't have a professional camera or a specific webcam for this, you can use your laptop's webcam without any problem. Above all, I recommend that you use the laptop because it is very stable. You can leave it on the table and it will hardly move at all. If you don't have a good webcam on your laptop or don't have a laptop, you can use your mobile phone without any problem because practically any mobile phone nowadays has more than sufficient quality for video. That said, if you don't want to be balancing your phone, propping it up on books, and risking it falling in the middle of the interview multiple times, I advise you to use a good mobile tripod. On AliExpress or Amazon, you can find them for less than $15 in all varieties, and you will get much more use out of them than just for doing interviews. Personally, I use a mobile phone tripod to which I have connected a GoPro that I use as a webcam, but I avoid using the wide-angle mode of this camera because it is not very professional for an interview. Ultimately, you can use the laptop camera or a mobile phone with a good tripod. The second audiovisual thing you need to consider is the audio. If the visual aspect was very important, the other big part of the interview will be carried by the audio. Similarly, the audio from the microphone of your laptop or your mobile phone is more than sufficient. I also tell you that ideally, if you are going to do quite a few interviews and if you want to take this a bit seriously, you should have a specific microphone for it. Without a doubt, a USB or condenser microphone like the one I'm using now would be absolutely perfect. But there is something that we all have at home and that you can use without any problem, which will also give you very professional results in terms of audio, and that is to use the headphones or earphones that come with your mobile phone. These devices have quite good microphones that you can use for video calls. This way, using a specific microphone, even if it's from these headphones or headsets, will give you a much clearer and crisper sound than that of your mobile phone or your laptop, and your voice will sound much clearer to the interviewer. There will be fewer misunderstandings and the interview will be much smoother. Another thing you should keep in mind is the shot you are going to use, or in other words, the focus of the camera. Place the camera roughly at the height of your eyes or face, because if you use a very high angle, a low angle, or record yourself from below, it will greatly distort the personal impression you give to the interviewer in this job interview. If you are using the laptop, I advise you to use some books to give it some height above the table and be able to place it at eye level. If you use a mobile phone with one of the tripods like the one I just mentioned, you will be able to position the mobile phone very easily at the height of your face. And that's it. With that, it's more than enough in terms of the focus you are going to use. Very, very important. Use adequate lighting. It is of little use to have your equipment perfectly prepared if the lighting is not adequate for the interview. However, don't go crazy thinking you need a professional lighting system. In fact, it's quite simple. I'm going to give you a couple of tips that you can use immediately. First, use a soft light source. In case you don't know, a soft light is one that doesn't produce very harsh shadows and is achieved by placing a diffuser in front of the light source. This way, you will eliminate the different shadows that appear on your face when you are directly illuminated by light, and your image will look much more natural. If you have a window that lets in sunlight, you can use a simple white blind or curtain that will give you that soft lighting. This blind or curtain will act as a diffuser and will eliminate the shadows on your face. If you don't have a good light source through the window, or if you are going to do the interview at night, you should use an artificial light source such as a lamp. Any lamp can work for you. You don't need photography lights. A lamp like the one you have on your bedside table is enough. Now, I recommend that you use white light bulbs because they provide a much more natural image. And to act as a diffuser, you can use a cloth, a t-shirt, or a white sheet of paper placed right in front of the bulb to give you that soft, shadow-free light. And secondly, you have to consider where you are going to position the light in relation to yourself. And this is very simple. Always place the light in front of you. Never place it behind you. This way, the entire frame will be properly lit and you won't be backlit, which would only make you appear as a shadow. And you can't imagine how uncomfortable it is for interviewers to see shadows in a job interview. Taking a little care with the lighting, the camera, and the audio gives the impression that you are interested in working there, that the image you are presenting is very important to you, and we on the other side notice it. Well, now that you have everything set up, you have a good audio device, a good video device, and correct lighting. In principle, you should have everything ready to do the interview. This leads me directly to the next tip. Make sure everything works correctly. And do this before connecting to the interview, not during the interview or at the beginning. Virtual job interviews are conducted through video call programs, the most common ones being Zoom, Microsoft Teams, or Google Meets. Well, once you have received the link to connect from your interviewer, you should make sure that you have the program installed on your computer or on your mobile phone, that you have an active account on this program, and check that your audio and voice devices work correctly with this program. It is very important that you set this up well before the interview, because when you are in front of your interviewer, it will be time to sell yourself, right? The time to prove that everything works. Next, be careful with the batteries. This may seem very obvious to you, but you can't imagine how many times we conduct interviews and find that the connection drops automatically because the batteries fail. And no, these are not excuses that interviewees make to get by. There are really interviews that are going very well and suddenly get interrupted due to a bad battery. My advice is to have the battery of the mobile phone or the computer you are going to use fully charged to 100%. And why do I tell you this? It's not that I'm excessively cautious, it's just that when you're on a video call, the battery consumption rate is much higher than what you normally experience on your device. So make sure your battery is at 100% and avoid any kind of problem. And well, of course, if you have a plug nearby, it's much better to have the device connected directly to the power source. That way you can be sure you won't have any unwanted surprises. The clothes you wear for an in-person interview might be much more formal, and this is completely normal, but that same attire might look odd in an online interview. Usually you do these interviews at home, but that doesn't mean you should do the interview in pajamas. If in an in-person interview you use this level of elegance, in an online interview you should use a slightly lower level without completely dropping the elegance. If you wear a suit with a tie, no matter how very formal the job is, it will look very odd. I recommend that you wear a simple shirt. It is a garment that is both formal and informal in equal parts, and with that piece you will always get it right. If you are a girl, a blouse is more than enough. As many of you are doing a job interview at a very formal company, you can wear a jacket, a blazer over your shirt. But of course, no ties, bow ties, or excessive makeup. Show yourself as naturally as possible. And by the way, speaking of naturalness, this brings me to the last point. Show a natural attitude, but a little more intense than you usually have. I'm going to tell you the truth. Online interviews are completely unnatural for both you and the interviewer on the other side. Ultimately, human beings usually socialize in person. So that strange feeling you have when you are doing a job interview is very likely also felt by your interviewer. The fundamental difference is that you do online interviews very sporadically, while your interviewer is used to doing interviews almost daily. That is to say, they are much more accustomed to situations like this than you are. The attitude you should show to connect with your interviewer is to display as much naturalness as possible, but as I mentioned at the beginning, just a little more intense than usual, just a little bit in the job interview. In the end, what you need to do, as I always tell you, is to sell yourself. But since you are in an online interview, you have far fewer resources than you do when you are in an in-person interview. Your personal and individual charm will not be as noticeable. So specifically take care of your tone when speaking, the energy you convey, and the positivity, because it is even more important than in in-person interviews. Regarding the image you present on camera, and to conclude this video, I will tell you that it is very important to take care of your body position. You should be upright, but not rigid. Move your hands naturally to accompany what you are saying and avoid excessive gestures. Be natural and avoid signs of nervousness. You should feel comfortable, even though you and your interviewer know that you are in a somewhat strange situation. And that's it. I hope these tips have helped you prepare a little better for online job interviews. If you like this video, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to see more content like this. And if you know someone who is going to have a virtual interview soon, you can share this video. Best of luck with the interview, and thank you for watching this video until the end. See you in the next one. Goodbye.